Do you want to be able to take photos like these, maybe capturing motion, taking photos at night time, or maybe adding blur for effect? All of these things are possible with a basic understanding of shutter speed. So in this video, I'm going to talk you through what shutter speed is, how to control it within your camera so you can be more creative with your photography. Welcome to the Photo Genius channel. Hi, Paul here from Photo Genius. Welcome to my channel where I post regular photography tutorials, all designed to help you get more for your digital camera. So if you enjoy this video and you're keen to learn more, please consider subscribing. Now this week's video is all about shutter speed. Now this is a topic that I have featured in previous videos, but in this video I want to go a little bit deeper. In fact, I want to talk through the entire shutter speed range from the fastest to the slowest shutter speed. I want to talk about why you might choose and use certain shutter speeds and how that's going to affect your images. I'm going to show you how to change your shutter speed. Plus, of course, we're going to look at lots of example images and more. Now, as a thank you for those of you that stick around and watch my videos to the end, I'm also going to start featuring bonus tips. So look out for those too. Okay, so let's begin with the basics. What is the shutter and what is meant by the term shutter speed? Well, think of the shutter like a door. It sits behind the lens and currently it's closed. And that means that no light can pass through the lens and be recorded by the camera. But that all changes when we press the shutter button, because the shutter then opens and then closes. All the time it's open, the camera is recording light. So by adjusting the duration of time the shutter is open, we get to control how much light is recorded by the camera. But we don't refer to this as shutter duration, we refer to this as shutter speed, and just as well, because it sounds cooler. Now when it comes to taking a picture, we want to be able to adjust the exposure so we can make our pictures brighter or darker. Now we can do this by adjusting three things: aperture, shutter speed and ISO. But shutter speed is often the preferred and more practical way of doing this, simply because of the large shutter speed range that is available to us within the average camera. Now the numbers can be quite confusing, but don't worry, because of course I'm here to talk you through this and show you how it works. The shutter speed is displayed on the LCD screen on the back of the camera, typically to the left of the aperture value. And don't worry for now if the number you see on the back of your camera is different. I'll show you how to change the shutter speed later in the video. The shutter speed, or duration of time the shutter is open, is shown either in seconds or fractions of a second. Now I'm going to change the shutter speed and stop here. Now this is a shutter speed of 1 second. This is a fairly slow shutter speed and sounds like this. Now I'm going to increase the shutter speed, which, as you will see, is now shown as a fraction. This is 1/4 of a second. It is of course a faster shutter speed and sounds like this. Increase the shutter speed a little bit more. Here we're at 1/10 of a second. And increasing again, we are now at 1/100th of a second. Now as I continue, of course the shutter speed is going to get faster and faster, and now I've reached a shutter speed of 1/8000th of a second, which is the fastest shutter speed for this particular camera. Most DSLR cameras will have a top shutter speed of 1/4000th of a second. To show you how this works in a practical sense, I set my camera up to take a photo along the Brisbane River. This was mid-morning on a cloudy day. With the camera's shutter set to 1/4000th of a second, the camera's light meter is showing underexposure, which means the shutter speed is currently too fast and the image will be too dark. But I took the photo anyway, just to show you. So to let more light in, I need to select a slower shutter speed. So I adjusted the shutter speed, and as you can see, as I select a slower shutter speed, so the light meter also adjusts. At 1/1600th of a second, the meter is still indicating underexposure, but again I took the shot just to show you. And finally, adjusting the shutter speed to 1/800th of a second. This is a slower shutter speed again. The meter is now balanced, and of course the shutter will be opened longer so the camera can record more light. Here's the shot. As you can see, I returned to the same spot later that evening. Now these are the camera settings I used previously, but of course because it's now much darker, the same settings won't work, and we can see this as the meter clearly shows underexposure and is even flashing to indicate just how dark the image would be if I was to take the shot. Now I'm going to switch to live view. Now so the camera can record more light, I'm going to start slowing the shutter speed down. Remember, the slower the shutter speed is, the longer it is open and the more light can be recorded. So as you can see, the shutter speed is getting slower and slower, and keep your eye on the light meter. Once it stops flashing, then you know you're getting close to the perfect exposure. We're now looking at a shutter speed of 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 8 seconds. The meter is nearly balanced. And finally, at 30 seconds, the meter is balanced and we can take our shot. And lucky for you, you don't have to wait another 30 seconds to see the image, because here it is straight out of the camera. So we've seen how we can use different shutter speeds to affect exposure, light, and make our pictures brighter or darker. But we can also use the shutter speed in a different way to be even more creative with our photography. Let me show you some examples. If capturing motion and movement is your thing, then a fast shutter speed can almost stop time, allowing us to enjoy a moment past as well as capture amazing detail. But equally, a slower shutter speed can be used to create blur. This allows us to see motion, time passing, and create beautiful landscapes. Now coming up in just a moment, I want to share with you the camera settings that I use to take those photos. I'm also going to show you how to change the shutter speed on your camera, and we're going to look at how shutter speed affects movement. Now before we get onto that, this seems like the ideal opportunity to tell you all about NordVPN, who have kindly sponsored this week's video. A VPN is a service that protects you, your data, and your privacy online by encrypting your internet traffic and hiding your IP address. Now for me, this can be really useful as I'm often working on location using my mobile phone or public Wi-Fi to stay connected. NordVPN is protecting me and my data even now when I'm on the move and I'm using my phone to do things like check emails, update my website, or just update my socials. NordVPN has got me covered. But it's also keeping me safe back in the office, because NordVPN can protect up to 6 devices, which means I don't have to worry because my computer, my laptop, my phone are all fully protected, and all it takes is just one click to set up. Now when I go home, I don't have to worry there either, because I know that my wife's laptop and my daughter's laptop are fully protected by NordVPN. NordVPN have over 500 servers in 60 countries. Using the app, I can select any server in any location at any time. It's so easy to do. Let me show you how I do it on my phone. Open the app, and as you can see, I'm currently connected to a server in Australia. But let's say there's a program on Netflix that I want to watch, but it's only available in the USA. Well, all I need to do is select United States, and within a few seconds, I'm connected to a server in the USA. So not only is my data and privacy protected, but the world thinks I'm in the USA. So now I can grab some popcorn and get to watching Netflix. So as you can probably tell, I'm a big fan of NordVPN. I have been using their services for some time, and I really love that peace of mind knowing that my personal data is safe and secure no matter what device I'm using and no matter where I am in the world. So why not give it a go for yourself? Go to nordvpn.com/photogenius to get a 2-year plan plus 1 additional month with a huge discount. Plus, it's absolutely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. To get on board or find out more, all you've got to do is use the link in the description below this video, and don't forget to use the promo code PhotoGenius. And a big thank you once again to NordVPN for kindly supporting the PhotoGenius channel and keeping our data safe. Make sure you check out that link below the video to find out more. Okay, back to shutter speed, and now we're going to look at how we can use different shutter speeds to create some really cool effects. Now to show you how shutter speed affects motion, I'm going to be using my turntable. With the turntable spinning, the first shot at 1/100th of a second is fast enough to enable us to read the text, house music or lifelong. Select a shutter speed of 40th of a second. There is now some motion blur, but we can still read the words. Next, a shot at 1/20th of a second, then 1/10th of a second, and finally a 1/4 second exposure, and the motion blur is such that the wording is now unreadable, but it is a good way to show the turntable is in motion. This was a tricky shot to get because there's a fine line between getting the sharpness of the helicopter but having blur in the background and also blur in the rotor blades. The same technique here and almost the same shutter speed, panning the camera with the bike to keep the bike sharp but blur the background. For this image, a shutter speed of just over half a second to get some nice motion blur in the water, and by contrast these two images use fast shutter speeds where it's all about freezing the motion, capturing the action, and you can see almost every single water droplet. And finally this beautiful pelican gliding across the bay, and once again a fast shutter speed to capture all the detail. So as you can see, the shutter speed is an incredibly important feature of the camera, particularly if you factor movement into your photography or your subject. Okay, now how to change the shutter speed on your camera. Because the shutter speed is the camera setting you're most likely to adjust, camera manufacturers make it very easy to make a change. Let's start with Canon cameras first. With the camera in either the manual mode or shutter priority mode, also known as time value, you will find a wheel or dial on the top of the camera. Turning this changes the shutter speed. Dialing to the right to increase the shutter speed, and of course dial to the left if you want to slow the shutter down and extend the exposure time. If you have a Nikon camera, then the dial is usually found on the back of the camera and it works in exactly the same way. Dial to the right for a faster shutter speed, or to the left if you want to slow the shutter speed down. Now I'd also like to mention, if you have a Nikon ZFC, there is a dial on the top of the camera for selecting and adjusting the shutter speed, but the options are limited. So what you can do is set the dial to 1/3 step. Then you can turn the dial on the back of the camera to change the shutter speed, and you have the full range of options available. And likewise, most Fujifilm cameras also have the old school retro style dial on the top of the camera, and again adjustments may be limited to single stops. So all you have to do then is simply turn the dial on the camera to adjust in thirds of a stop. So now you know just how easy it is to change the shutter speed. Let's go through the entire shutter speed range as found on the average camera, and you might want to grab your camera and follow along. Typically for most cameras, the slowest shutter speed will be 30 seconds. These slow shutter speeds are a very effective way of taking photos at night or in situations where there isn't much light available, and for capturing light trails. Now when using slow shutter speeds, we often use the term long exposure. This is simply because the camera's sensor is exposed to light for a longer period of time. Now you will see the shutter speed is shown as a fraction of a second. These are still slow shutter speeds and are great for low light situations like sunrise, sunset and indoor photography. Now we are getting into the hundreds and ideal for most daytime photography and well lit situations. The full range of shutter speeds available will of course vary depending on the camera, with the fastest shutter speed usually being either 1/4000 or 1/8000th of a second. Now I think a great way to familiarize yourself with all the numbers is to break the shutter speed range down into sections. Thousandths, hundredths, tenths of a second, and of course actual seconds. So I really hope that this video has given you a better insight and understanding of what shutter speed can do and how you can use it to be even more creative when taking photos. Now don't go away, because you may recall at the beginning of this video I did say that as a thank you for making it to the end, I want to share some bonus tips. Okay, let's do it. Now if you're taking photos in the evening and using a slow shutter speed, make sure you do everything you can to keep the camera from moving whilst the shutter is open. So invest in a good tripod and either use a remote to activate the camera, or if you don't have one, use the camera self timer. This will delay the shot by a few seconds and help eliminate any movement that can be caused when pressing the shutter button. Tip number 2 is if you're taking photos of moving subjects, have a go at panning and moving the camera with the subject. Now this will help keep the subject from blurring and is a popular technique with sports photographers. Now try to be brave and use a slower shutter speed and you should get a nice background blur. Now I also recommend using the camera's viewfinder rather than the live view on the LCD screen, which can slow down the camera's focusing. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this week's video and the bonus tips. If you did, please give it a thumbs up because it helps the videos get noticed and that in turn helps the channel grow. Now if you don't want to miss out on next week's videos and future videos, make sure you consider subscribing to the channel. And of course I want to say a big thank you to NordVPN for kindly supporting the channel. Don't forget to check out their amazing deal, link below this video. All that's left to do is to say once again thanks for watching and hope to see you again sometime soon. See ya. Bye.